Hello, friends and neighbors of the Bronx. Welcome to BronxTalk. From time to time, we like to dip into our vast archive of more than 1,540 editions of BronxTalk to provide some historical perspective to our daily Bronx lives. So this time, we've chosen the period between 2015 and 2019 to review. We'll do one BronxTalk from each one of those years. So let's start with March 30th, 2015, when Arlene Alda came to visit us to talk about her book. That's this book, Just Kids from the Bronx, that features chapters on some of the most famous Bronxites. By the way, if her last name Alda is familiar, yes, she is TV and film star Alan Alda's wife, and yes, he came to Bronxnet too, although he didn't want to appear on camera. So here she is, Arlene Alda, on BronxTalk in March 2015.
I met a guy, and it wasn't my husband. I met a guy.
We won't tell him.
About 5 years ago or so, maybe a little earlier. And we met casually at a dinner party, and I found out he was from the Bronx. Not only from the Bronx, but also from the same building I grew up in. And his name is Mickey Drexler, and he's CEO of J. Crew. So on a lark, we decided to go back to the building we both grew up in.
So
which we did.
That in and of itself is a Bronx story, because everywhere I go, I mean, if you leave town, you always run into somebody from the Bronx, or I'm a DeWitt Clinton guy, so I run into somebody from Clinton.
Yep.
And so you went back to the neighborhood?
We went back to we went back to the neighborhood, we went back to the building, the Mayflower, where we both were brought up at different times. I'm 11 years older. Mickey was a toddler when I was off in high school. I didn't know him at the time. Okay, so we went back, and he was very animated, telling me about his childhood, and me the same way. And as that progressed, I thought, this is incredible. There's something so wonderful happening here. I know this guy from the surface, but I didn't know this guy from his childhood, where it really began. So, and I know there are a lot of interesting people, prominent people from the Bronx, and I thought it would be interesting to interview them and see where that led. So I interviewed a few people I knew. There was Regis Philbin, Martin Bregman, producer, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Mary Higgins Clark, and each one had a great story to tell. And so it spread from there to wanting to cover decades of people who lived.
And then as you went through these conversations, it sounds to me like you said, wow, this is so interesting, or another aspect of life. And then you said, gee whiz, you know, I should write a book. Now, you have written books. You have done numerous children's books. You've been a photographer. Never really did like a real, I hate to put it this way, an adult book like this, right?
Well, I did two books for adults that were more
photographs. Yeah, that's what I meant.
Photo generated, because the text came from the photographs. The photographs are first. This book is words. It's talking, it's words, and the photographs are wonderful vintage photographs that each person of the 65 people gave in to be in front of their chapter.
Talk to me about how the interviews went. Like you say, well, I interviewed him. Let's say you interviewed Mary Higgins Clark, or even Regis, who it's clear in the book that he's a neighbor of yours. Had you ever talked about the Bronx with Regis before that point?
Okay, we knew that each one of us had come from the Bronx, but we didn't exchange stories in depth. It was more like surface. Oh, you lived over there, I know where that is, and but I didn't get into the real story of what his family was like. And it wasn't until we started talking when I was taking down with the tape recorder.
Well, this is what I wanted to get into. My original question was, so you sat down with a tape recorder,
yeah,
and then you had somebody transcribe it, or you could always get them transcribed. Did you ask a lot of questions? Because the way the book reads is really, it's somebody just telling their story. Did you interrupt like I do all the time? Did you did you interrupt a lot? Or did you have to, did the stories just go? I mean, give me a sense of how some of those went.
The sense of it is, you have your finger on it. Yeah, it's pretty much right. I didn't, because I don't usually interview, I didn't have in my vocabulary, so to speak, a set of questions. I didn't know where to start except to say, hey, I'm from the Bronx too, kind of.
A number of times we have featured Bronx music and Bronx musicians on Bronx Talk. On May 30th, 2016, incredibly, we hosted a band of 100 fifth grade students from PS 76, the Bennington School, which is on AD Avenue, whose music program is supported by ETM, Education Through Music. We talked with conductor Jessica Parr about the program and what it does for Bronx students, and we also, of course, heard the huge band play. Take a look at Bronx Talk from May 2016. Just give me a little background about this particular band. How did it grow to be as big as it is? And where are we at now with these young people? First of all, they're fifth graders, right?
They're all fifth graders.
And tell me, how come we have many more than we had when we had you on the show the last time?
Well, the first time we were here, it was our first year with the Bennington Band. And now we're in our seventh year now. And every year the kids coming up, I think they were about in kindergarten the first year that the band started. So they've seen it for 6 years and they've said, I want to do this, I want to play that instrument. Those kids look so cool, I want to be just like them, right? So it's growing in numbers. And
how often do they practice, and how do you get them to a point where they sound so good?
well, they're supposed to practice every single day for at least 20 minutes. Kind of, yeah. And then we have rehearsals every morning, every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday morning, where they have to be at school in their spots by 7 o'clock in the morning.
7 o'clock. One of the parents was telling me they get up at 5 o'clock every morning or the mornings that they have practice. Talk about what it takes to put this together. At minimum, you don't want to take for granted that they have instruments. You have to get the instruments from somewhere. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, a lot of the students are renting from outside music companies, but we have an amazing relationship with Education Through Music, which helps put an instrument in every single kid's hand, regardless of any financial problems that they may have or anything they may be in. So any student that wants to be in the program is allowed to be in this program.
Last question for you. We're going to meet the people from Education for Music in just a moment. But the last question for you is, in terms of the importance of doing this at the school, what does this add to the school?
It adds an amazing part to our community. You know, they go out and they do a parade, we have outdoor concerts, the parents come to our events, and it really kind of brings everybody together, gives them something to kind of, I mean, a lot of these students didn't really know each other before this year, and now you see these new friendships blossoming, and the school coming around, and little kids coming in and wanting to watch them, and helping with their bake sale, even though they're not in the band. So it brings the school together.
How much money do you raise?
Well, we raised about $1,000.
Congratulations. This next segment comes from February 2017, during Donald Trump's first term as president. Now, of course, we know all about his immigration policies, but back then, we were just beginning to examine what his immigrant agenda means to our diverse borough of the Bronx. This is Bronx Talk, February 2017. Describe, from the way you see it, what the president was trying to do, what the original executive order was about, and then we'll go from there and break it down.
Well, Gary, there were actually 3 orders that were signed that week. The last one, however, is the one that has caused the most uproar and fury and affected people's lives. And essentially, what the president did was to suspend immigration, but only for immigrants and individuals, nationals of 7 particular countries. But he also completely suspended for 120 days our entire refugee program. So no refugee admissions for 120 days. For a period of 90 days, he suspended all immigration. So whether it was refugee, whether it was a mother who had been petitioned by her U.S. citizen son, whether it was a child seeking medical attention, it didn't matter. All immigration from nationals of one of 7 countries, that being Iran, Iraq, Libya, Sudan, Somalia, Syria, and Yemen. And then he suspended the Syrian refugee program indefinitely.
So I guess what we'll do is we'll lay aside the many questions that came up about the process and the way it was done and who was notified and who wasn't notified, because we'd do a whole show on that, I suppose,
Yes.
another time. So then in the state of Washington and the state of Minnesota, the attorneys general decided to protest it and decided to appeal this ruling. Very briefly, why did they appeal, and then why was that upheld at that time, and why did they stop the executive order?
So they appealed, and what happened in the district court is that the court stayed the enforcement of this executive order. And essentially, they said that they being the states, were harmed by this executive order because they had, for example, professors, students in their state university systems who were not able to travel for conferences, who were not able to come back to the school if they had been out of the country, and that because of the harm, they sued, but they asked for a stay while the case was pending, and it was the stay that was granted.
And then ultimately, so you've said it, that the appeals court upheld that, and so as I explained at the beginning, that's where we're at right now. Is there any historical precedence for this? Has anything like this been attempted? There's been a lot of talk about similarities between what FDR did with Japanese, with internment camps on the West Coast during World War II. Is that a parallel, or is this really something that has never been tried before?
Well, I mean, there certainly are some parallels. And in the time of national security, when a president, when an executive were to claim national security, the courts have traditionally given deference. But what the court was very clear about, the Ninth Circuit was very clear about in their decision, was that you still have to deal with the Constitution. And the government, the executive, cannot with a broad brush just simply state that because he or she is the president of the United States, they get to do whatever they feel that they can do.
We're going to bring Dr. Walton into the conversation and really give it, as I said to you earlier, give it a face and put a personal face on it and how it affects friends and neighbors in the Bronx. But what was the sticking issue for the courts? And you've already alluded to it in saying, well, the president can't control it. The president and the White House, of course, talks about the president has the right to determine who is, that he's going to be able to protect America and those kinds of things. Is that the sticking point of who has the power here? Is that what we're talking about?
Well, the reality is that the merits have not been heard, right? So the court didn't really get into all of the arguments that are being made by the state or the government. They did, however, say that the states had shown that they have a likelihood of success on the merits. And because they are likely to succeed, the stay was granted, right? So, and upheld. So the sticking point was really about, whether or not the states can sue in their capacity as states, and also whether there are legitimate constitutional challenges that needed to be heard.
Over our 32 years, we've interviewed 5 different Bronx Borough presidents. On March 3rd, 2018, then Borough President Ruben Diaz Jr. appeared on BronxTalk soon after he gave his annual State of the Borough address. It was number 29 of his record-setting 32 appearances on the program. So let's go back to March 2018. I thought it would be interesting to ask you about your own growth as an elected official. How have you changed? Has your vision of the borough changed? Are you better, I'm presumably better at doing your job as a representative? Just give us some perspective on how you see it.
I would hope so. We all would like to see growth in our respective fields. I think I've become a better listener than I was 22 years ago, obviously. When you look at the diversity in our borough, when you look at the diversity in the city and the complexities of different issues, it's important, I think, as an elected official, as a representative, to listen and digest the different points of views. And even though you may come into a situation already having a preconceived notion of where you want to go or how you want a project to look, I think over the years I've shown growth in that. Even though it may have gone against what I initially felt about a project or on an issue, after listening carefully, we've been able to compromise and negotiate. I think that's important.
Is it what you expected? You went into public service. I recall you were very passionate certainly about your community, and now, of course, all the communities in the Bronx. Have there been surprises along the way, or if you look back and say, gee whiz, this is what I expected?
I think it's more than I expected. It's been fulfilling. Look, I am the president of my hometown. I say that this all the time, so whether it's at the State of the Borough address or in different speeches or going out into the community. And I speak of the growth of this borough when we champion economic development, when we speak of job creation. It's because I remember I lived through it when people ran away from us, when businesses didn't want to be here, when we go out and we fight in favor of the residents at NYCHA, because I was born in public housing. My family was able to get out of public housing. When we speak of education and different opportunities, I'm a product of the public education system. So as the borough president, when you're able to help out schools, when you're able to help out NYCHA developments, create new parks, do something like find $60 million for the restoration of Orchard Beach and the pavilion there. When you went to Orchard Beach as a kid, it's fulfilling, it's rewarding, and I think the biggest thing is something that folks really don't pay attention to is our constituent services on the second floor in the courthouse. We have a whole team there that they don't get enough praise, but when you have the thousands and thousands of people that throughout the years come through those offices and they're in total despair, they have all this anxiety, they don't know who to turn to next, and the team is there helping them out on myriad different issues. That's what it's all about. It's about public service, and for me, it's been quite fulfilling, and I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. There
you go. Okay, let's roll up our sleeves and talk about issues. This week, the City Council is prepared to take up the Jerome Avenue rezoning. You had said during the speech that we hope that the city and the mayor will agree on securing agreements on the administration on tenant protections, no harassment. What specifically do you expect from them, and how do you actually secure things so they don't become empty promises like we've heard in projects both of us have talked about for many years?
So going back to my initial statement about listening carefully, being a better listener, we had our hearing at the courthouse, and it was over 4 hours, about 4.5 hours. I was able to listen to over 90 people testify who live in that corridor or in the surrounding area. And based on those testimonies, we were able to carve out, I think, with some strong recommendations, everything from making sure that you have deep affordability on whatever new buildings are coming in, to protecting the small businesses, to protecting the auto industry there, finding out a way where we could do the best that we can to keep them, as much of them as we can in that location, to create a task force with the elected officials, Vanessa Gibson and Fernando Cabrera and community leaders, to be able to identify not only where we need to protect tenants who live in that corridor, but also people who live outside of the rezoning area, because we know that there are so many landlords who are saying, wait a minute, if this is going to be rezoned, maybe I can raise the rent, maybe I can harass and force out the tenants. So we were able to get a certificate of no harassment.
One of the most important movies ever made about the Bronx was Decade of Fire. It's an eye-opening chronicle of the days in the 70s when the Bronx was burning. If you've seen it before, then you know how important a film it is in documenting Bronx history. If you have not seen it, we showed part of it on March 4th, 2019, just days before it appeared in the theater. Filmmaker Vivian Vasquez and housing rights activist Carmen Rosa Vega were our guests. Take a look.
Growing up, you know, it instilled fear and insecurity.
That's the point.
And, you know, and we were still kids, so we had to, you know, project toughness on top of all of that. So not only are we afraid, and not only are we like, oh my God, what's going to happen to my family? And, you know, we're not being treated right in these situations, and our homes look like, you know, like they're bombed out, but we have to pretend like everything's okay. But on the other hand, we took care of each other.
Exactly.
You know, there was a major, huge sense of community. We knew all our neighbors. You know, I can walk to my neighbor's house barefooted and ask for sugar, ask for food, vice versa. The kids, anybody could come into my apartment and do the same thing. We had a softball league. We danced.
So in an ironic way, some of that brought people together.
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. Let's show the trailer. There are so many other questions, and we're going to, as soon as we come out of the trailer, we're going to talk about who burnt the Bronx down and why it was burnt down. It comes out certainly in the full film. You'll get a sense of it in the trailer. So if you haven't seen it, we did roll it once before. I have seen the full film at a preview that was in the fall, but it's going to be Thursday night at Hostos Community College. You are required to be there. I don't know how else to tell you. Here it is, Decade of Fire.
We grew up in rubble. We grew up with burnt out decay all over us. The South Bronx was burning down around us, and nobody seemed to know why. This is a story of what happened to my neighborhood.
Everything south of the Cross Bronx Expressway, they just let it burn, and nobody gave a damn.
Fear was everywhere, and everybody was just trying to stay quiet about what was happening.
You see streets where it was teeming with people to become a ghost town.
We had come here from the South and from Puerto Rico, searching for the American dream. Our families live side by side in the most integrated neighborhoods in the country. But after the fires, it would all be gone. How could city government allow this to happen? Who was in charge? Why?
The South Bronx used to be a respectable Jewish neighborhood. It hasn't been bombed, it's been devastated by neglect, and the people who live here, mostly immigrants from the Deep South or Puerto Rico.
But we didn't burn the Bronx. We were the ones who stayed.
We didn't want to leave. We didn't want to go, but we didn't know how. Sometimes you need somebody to just start it.
I said, no, wait a minute. I have to make my move right now.
I made a commitment then, in December 1974, that I was going to put this building back together.
The reason we're trying to do all these things is to show an example to the rest of the people in the neighborhood that if you just try, you could make a lot better neighborhood.
This was just a taste of things to come.
But we need more money, Carter, because I think
the federal government can come in and wave a wand and do this.
Push! Why don't you push?
This story is not just about the Bronx. There are places like this in every major city in America. Places that everyone has given up on, except for us. We came from this so-called terrible place, the South Bronx. But we would never leave it behind.
That does it for our look back at the best of Bronx Talk between 2015 and 2019. We thank our producers from over the years and our current producer, Ray Pagnucco, for his great work. And also, of course, thanks to our production and editing crew at Bronxnet. And of course, to you too, it's always about the people of the Bronx. We'll see you next week. Good night.